You're the family disgrace. They'd sneer every holiday. So when I bought my dream home, I hosted the party of the year and left them off the guest list. They saw it on Facebook. The comments? Pure gold. Every holiday, like clockwork. I'd brace myself for the comments. The digs always came wrapped in fake laughter or clinking glasses. You're always the embarrassment, my dad would chuckle, nudging my brother as if I were a running joke only they got. My mom would just sigh. At least try not to say anything weird this year. And every time, I'd nod, smile tightly, and go. Help set the table or grab chairs from the garage, like a good background character in my own life. I'm Eli, 32, and for most of my adult life, I played the role they assigned to me, the quiet, odd one. The one who didn't climb the corporate ladder like my brother, Daniel, or gush about baby milestones like my sister, Carly. The one who wasted his 20s hopping from freelance gig to startup job to side hustle no one understood. Except that hustle finally paid off. I never made a big deal about what I did. When I was building apps for small businesses, my family said it sounded like a hobby. When I started consulting for tech companies, they rolled their eyes and asked when I'd get a real job. Even when I launched a SaaS product that took off during the pandemic, they laughed when I said I had to hire someone. Hire? You mean like a friend to help you with your website? Daniel snorted over Thanksgiving dinner, while Dad carved the turkey like he was auditioning for a cooking show. So I stopped talking about work altogether. It wasn't worth the effort. No matter what I did, I was the punchline, the disappointment, the embarrassment. The final straw wasn't even dramatic. It was Carly's birthday last year, her 35th, and Mom rented out a vineyard for the family. There were catered hors d'oeuvres, a live acoustic guitarist, and a slideshow of Carly's best moments, which included 5 baby photos, her high school graduation, and a picture of her holding up her first tax return. At some point during the speeches, Daniel raised his glass and said, "Here's to Carly, proof that being responsible pays off." Everyone laughed. My Aunt Cheryl actually clapped. Then Mom chimed in, "And here's to Eli, for keeping us guessing." Another round of laughter. My wine glass shook in my hand. That night, I stayed late to help clean up, not because they deserved it, but because the catering staff looked exhausted and overwhelmed. As I carried folding chairs back to the van, Daniel passed me with a smirk. "Always the help, huh?" said under his breath, loud enough for me to hear, but soft enough for deniability. I didn't say anything. I just finished up and drove home in silence. But that silence didn't mean defeat. It meant planning. I'd been saving up quietly for years. Tech income can be volatile, but I'd made smart moves, invested, scaled back when needed, automated what I could. And earlier that spring, I'd closed on a modern 3-bedroom home tucked away in a gated hillside neighborhood. Floor-to-ceiling windows, smart everything, and a backyard that made realtors gasp. It was my dream house, and no one in my family knew about it. Not because I was hiding it, but because not a single person had ever asked what was going on in my life. I signed the papers, unpacked my boxes, and then did something I'd never done before. I celebrated myself. I planned a housewarming party like it was a red carpet event. I sent personalized invites to my closest friends, some old clients who'd become dear to me, and a few colleagues who'd supported me through rough patches. No family, not a single one. I told them I was busy that weekend when someone tried to set up a brunch. I made the event private on Facebook, but not invisible. That part was intentional. The night of the party was perfect. The string lights glowed over the patio, the catered food smelled incredible, and laughter echoed through the halls of a house filled with people who actually saw me, not as a side note, but as someone worth celebrating. We had music, speeches, even a little impromptu karaoke near the fire pit. I took pictures with everyone, posed with the champagne tower, and at the insistence of my old business mentor, even gave a short thank you speech. My friend Julie posted a photo of me on the balcony, arms raised, city lights in the background, with the caption, "From outcast to empire builder. So proud of you, Eli." That post. That's what started the chaos. I woke up the next morning to a dozen missed calls, 7 from my mom, 3 from Daniel, 1 from Carly, and 1 from a random number that turned out to be Aunt Cheryl. My Facebook notifications had exploded. My profile, which I barely used, had been tagged in photos, stories, and even a video someone took of the moment I cut the ribbon across the front door with giant novelty scissors. I didn't post any of it, but I didn't hide it either. The comments section was glorious. Wait, Eli, this house is stunning. When did this happen? You deserve this, congrats. OMG, I'm crying, so proud of you. And then, buried in the mix, why weren't we invited? From my cousin Jenna. Your family should have been there. This is so hurtful. From Carly. A passive-aggressive. I guess some people forget who raised them. From Mom. Even Daniel commented. Guess that fake job worked out, huh? Could have told us. I didn't respond. Not to the comments, not to the voicemails, not to the long paragraph text my mom sent saying I'd embarrassed the family by making them look like strangers. That word, embarrassed. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted the message. But that wasn't the end. Because 2 days later, Daniel showed up at my gate, buzzing in like we were friends. I didn't answer the gate call right away. I stood at the kitchen island, coffee in hand, watching his face through the video intercom. He looked annoyed, impatient, dressed like he came straight from the office, button-down shirt, watch that probably cost more than my first car, and that same expression he always wore when he was about to give me advice. He pressed the buzzer again. Eli, he said into the speaker, his voice crackling. Seriously, I'm not here to fight. Just open the gate. I didn't respond. I waited. After the third buzz, he pulled out his phone, probably texting me. Sure enough, my phone lit up a second. Later, Daniel, open the gate. I'm not leaving until we talk. I let him wait another minute. Then, with a deep breath, I pressed the gate release. He drove up slowly, scanning the front of the house like he was still trying to process it. He parked in the driveway on the left, where the pavers were still spotless, and got out without saying a word. As he approached the door, I opened it before he could knock. So, he said, arms folded, this is real. I just leaned against the door frame. Yeah. Why didn't you tell us? I let out a quiet laugh. When's the last time you asked me anything about my life, Dan? He rolled his eyes. Come on, we're family. You called my business a hobby. You said I was always the help. Every holiday, you made it your mission to remind me I was the joke in the family. He raised a hand. That's not fair. It is fair, I said, my tone sharper now. You all did it. You thought it was harmless, just teasing, but it wasn't. It chipped away year after year until I stopped talking altogether. For a moment, he looked genuinely uncomfortable, like he didn't know what to say next. He glanced behind me into the house. This place is amazing, he muttered. Must have cost a fortune. I didn't answer. He was fishing, trying to measure how far I'd gotten without him. Look, I didn't come here to fight, he said finally. But Mom's really upset. So is Carly. You embarrassed them. I almost laughed again. Embarrassed them? They've been calling me the embarrassment for a decade, but the moment I do something worth celebrating and don't include them, it's me who crossed the line. Daniel didn't respond. He shifted uncomfortably on the porch. She cried, he said. You know Mom, when she saw the photos. She cried when I dropped out of grad school. Too, I said. Told me I'd never make anything of myself. Maybe she just doesn't like surprises. He glanced down at his shoes, then back up at me. Look, I'm not saying we were perfect. You were cruel, Dan. All of you. And you didn't even notice. Silence. Then he cleared his throat. So what now? You cut us off? Pretend we don't exist. I looked at him, really looked. The same brother who used to shove me out of photos, who once told me at a Christmas dinner that I was lucky to be included at all. And now here he was, standing on my porch, needing my permission to enter. I'm not pretending anything, I said. Calmly. I'm just choosing who gets to be part of my life. His jaw tightened. So you're just going to keep punishing everyone? This isn't punishment, I said, my voice quiet. It's peace. Another beat of silence. Then he turned to leave. But before he reached his car, he turned back one last time. You're still bitter, he said. No house in the world changes that. I didn't flinch. And you're still arrogant. No amount of parties changes that. He drove off without another word. That afternoon, I got a message from my cousin Jenna. It was a screenshot of a group chat I wasn't in. My mom had written, I don't understand why he's doing this. We raised him, didn't we? Maybe he just likes making us look bad. Carly replied, he's always been a little off. I knew something like this would happen eventually. Then Daniel, let him enjoy his little victory lap. It won't last. I read that line twice. It won't last. That was the moment I realized they still didn't believe any of it was real. They thought it was a fluke, a phase. They couldn't see me as successful because that would mean admitting they were wrong about me for years. So I made a decision. Not to retaliate, not to argue, but to keep going, quietly, deliberately, and to make sure they watched every step. The next morning, I accepted an offer to do a guest segment on a tech podcast with a huge following. That same week, I signed with an agency to scale my consulting into a full firm. I updated my LinkedIn, posted a few shots from the party on my public profile, nothing flashy, just enough to be seen. I didn't need their approval. I just wanted them to know they weren't the center of my story anymore. And that's when things took a sharp turn. Because 3 days later, I got a message from my mom. Not a comment, not a voicemail, a handwritten letter delivered by courier. Inside were 5 pages and a request. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, expensive, like something you'd expect for a wedding invitation or a legal notice. I almost didn't open it. A part of me wanted to toss it in the drawer, unopened, let it collect dust with all the other things I'd been too tired to process over the years. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside were 5 handwritten pages on lined paper, the kind my mom always kept around the house in stacks. Her handwriting hadn't changed since I was a kid. Looped letters, neat, with a heavy underline on every word she thought was important. The first page started without a greeting, just, I don't even know where to begin. I leaned back in my chair, phone on silent, coffee forgotten. She went on to say how hurt she was, how confused, how shocked she was to find out I had moved into such a nice home and didn't think to share that with my family. She wrote that she'd seen the Facebook photos, the comments from strangers congratulating me like they were the ones who raised me. She said it felt like being erased. By page 2, the letter turned subtly. At first, you always had a flair for drama, Eli, even as a kid. Remember, you used to hide in your room for hours if someone teased you, even if it was just a joke. We're family. Families poke fun sometimes. That's how we keep each other grounded. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't an apology. This was a rewrite. A soft rebranding of years of put-downs into loving sarcasm. A passive framing of cruelty as just teasing, of exclusion as tough love. And every line carried the same unspoken message. This is your fault for being sensitive. Page 3 was a list of misunderstandings. How Daniel didn't mean it when he said I'd never succeed. How Carly had always admired my independence. How Dad was just old-fashioned and didn't understand modern careers. She underlined that word old-fashioned. By page 4, she was making requests. Let's put all this behind us. Why not host another get-together? We can make it a family thing this time. Everyone's willing to try if you are. Then she dropped the real reason behind the letter. Your cousin Jenna mentioned something about your company growing. That's wonderful. Maybe we could all sit down sometime and talk about how to support each other financially or otherwise. You've always been good with money, and there are a few things we've been struggling with that maybe you could help us navigate. I stopped reading. The rest of the letter sat heavy in my lap, but I didn't need to see the last lines. I already knew what they would say, some variation of "we miss you, you're still part of this family," and maybe even "please respond soon." I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out over the patio. The lanterns from the party were still hanging, swaying lightly in the breeze. The champagne glasses were gone, but the energy remained, the memory of laughter, of people cheering me, not tolerating me. And I realized something. This wasn't about reconciliation. It wasn't about love. It was about control. For the first time in their lives, they didn't get to decide how I showed up. I wasn't Eli the helper, Eli the weird one, Eli the embarrassment. I was Eli, the man who made it without them. And they hated it. I sat back down and stared at the envelope. There was one more page. I forced myself to read it. We'd like to come by and see the house. Maybe bring a bottle of wine. Take a few photos, show everyone how proud we are. I think it would mean a lot to your father. I could feel my jaw clench. Not meant a lot to me. Not let's talk. Just let's take photos. Let's show people. Let's prove we're proud now that it's convenient. That night, I didn't reply. Instead, I took the letter, scanned it, and saved a copy. Then I lit a fire in the pit out back, poured myself a drink, and watched the pages curl and vanish into flame. 2 days later, Carly tagged me in a post. A family dinner, all smiles, a caption that read, "Some people forget where they came from, but we still know what real love looks like." The comments under it were something else. Aunt Cheryl commented, "Family first, always." Daniel commented, "No room for egos here, just real connection." Mom commented, Amen to that. And then, buried under the pile, a comment from someone I hadn't talked to since high school. Wait, didn't Eli just have a party last week? Didn't see any of you there. That comment, it disappeared within minutes. I didn't reply. I didn't repost. I just watched. Because the moment was coming. A very specific, very public moment. And I was going to make sure they all saw it. I didn't respond to the Facebook post. I didn't message anyone. Not Carly. Not Daniel. Not Mom. I just let them stew in the illusion they were trying to construct, that nothing had changed, that they were still the center of my life, still the axis I quietly orbited around. But behind the scenes, I got to work. A month before, I'd been approached by a local magazine that featured up-and-coming entrepreneurs in the area. They wanted to do a profile on me, my tech company, my work with small businesses, my story. I'd originally turned it down, not wanting the attention. But now I called the editor back. We scheduled the interview for the following week. I didn't dress up or script the speech. I just spoke plainly, told them about the years of freelancing, the long nights building something from nothing, the struggles with being underestimated by people who thought success only looked one way. I left out the family drama, but it was there, between the lines, threaded through my tone, my silences, the words I didn't say. The piece ran under the headline, From Failure to Founder: How One Local Underdog Quietly Built a Seven-Figure Company. It featured a photo of me on the balcony of my home, city lights behind me, the caption reading, Eli Grant, 32, says he never fit in and finally stopped trying. I posted the article on my LinkedIn, tagged the magazine, and let it spread. The response was immediate. Clients reached out, recruiters sent emails, old classmates messaged congratulations. Even one of my college professors left a comment. Knew you had it in you, Eli. Your capstone project was years ahead of its time. But the real reward? That came 3 days later. I got a message from my dad. Short, cold, predictable. Saw the article. Nice place. Would have been good if you included us. Let me know when we can come see the house. I didn't respond. The next day, my mother called twice, then a third time. I let it ring. Then Carly texted. Can we talk? Just us. That one, I answered. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my old neighborhood, neutral territory. She was already sitting when I arrived, a latte in front of her, stirring it in slow circles like she was waiting for courage to dissolve in the foam. Hey, she said. I sat down across from her. Hey. For a few moments, we didn't speak. Then she exhaled hard and said, Look, I know we've been awful. I won't pretend otherwise. We didn't take you seriously, and that wasn't fair. I nodded once. Let her keep going. I think a lot of it was jealousy. And maybe fear too. You didn't follow the script. You didn't go to grad school or get married or have the kind of life people post about. And when it started working for you anyway, it scared people. That surprised me, the honesty in it. But Eli, she continued, shutting us out, the party, the photos, the interviews, you made us look like strangers. I leaned forward. That's because you are. You became strangers to me years ago. I just didn't have the words or the confidence to say it. Every time you laughed at me or left me out or made me feel like the family mascot instead of a member, you drove a wedge deeper. She looked down, her jaw clenched. So is that it? We're just cut off. No, I said, but the terms are different. Now, I'm not begging for inclusion anymore. I'm not handing out emotional discounts to people who think my worth is up for debate. She nodded slowly. So what are the terms? I sipped my coffee. You don't speak for me. You don't show up uninvited. And if you want to be part of my life, you do it as equals. Without jokes at my expense. Without snide comments. Without asking for favors disguised as reconnection. Her eyes watered, but she didn't argue. Okay, she whispered. I hear you. We talked for another 20 minutes. It wasn't warm, but it was real. And that was more than I'd had in years. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask to see the house. She just asked, can I try to do better? And I said, yes, but I meant, we'll see. The fallout came 2 weeks later. My father tried to organize a family dinner at a restaurant. Just the 5 of us. I declined the invitation, politely, firmly. I told them I was busy with work, which was true. I'd just been invited to speak at a tech conference in Vancouver and was prepping my slides. The next day, Daniel called. He left. A voicemail I saved. You think you're better than us now? Just because you got lucky? You're still the same awkward loser you always were. Money doesn't buy respect, Eli. It just buys walls. He was right about one thing. I was the same in many ways. Still quiet, still introspective, still a little awkward. But I wasn't weak anymore. I didn't need their validation like oxygen. That weekend, I hosted another party. Not a huge one, just a private dinner for a few close friends, mentors, and one very specific guest, Carly. She showed up with a bottle of wine and a nervous smile. I welcomed her in, gave her a tour, and watched her eyes widen at every room. She kept saying, "You really did this. You really made it." And I finally let myself smile without bitterness. "Yeah," I said. "I did." She was different that night. Quieter, more thoughtful. I caught her lingering in my home office, staring at the whiteboard covered in notes, at the plaques and framed articles. "You know," she said as we cleared plates later, "I think this is the first time I've ever seen you as the main character." I laughed softly. That's because it's the first time I stopped asking for permission. By the end of the night, she hugged me. Not the stiff, performative hug I was used to, but something warmer, something real. And when she left, I didn't feel drained. I felt lighter. That night, I opened my inbox. 3 more emails from Mom. 1 from Dad. All ignored. Then 1 from a podcast producer who wanted to feature me in an episode titled, "The Power of Being Underestimated." I accepted. When the episode dropped, I included a line near the end that I hadn't planned. I said, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's building a life so right that their opinions become irrelevant. Not because you've erased them, but because you've outgrown them." I didn't say their names. I didn't have to. They heard it anyway. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the embarrassment.